The old garage sat at the edge of town like a forgotten memory. Its paint was peeling, the roof sagged in the middle, and weeds pushed through cracks in the concrete driveway. Most people drove past it without even turning their heads. But every morning at sunrise, an old man named Walter opened the rusty metal doors with the same care a person gives to something they love deeply. And one cold October morning, a black luxury SUV stopped in front of the garage. Inside was a billionaire CEO who thought he could buy the place for pennies. He had no idea that beneath that broken garage rested one of the greatest hidden collections in racing history. Before we begin, make sure to like, subscribe, and leave a comment below if you believe kindness can change lives. Welcome to Kindness Unlimited, where every story reminds us that compassion is stronger than greed. Walter Hayes had owned Hayes Auto Repair for nearly 40 years. The garage wasn't much to look at, but the people in town trusted him more than anyone else. If a single mother couldn't afford repairs, Walter quietly fixed the car anyway. If a teenager needed help learning how to drive stick shift, Walter stayed after closing to teach them. If someone was stranded on the highway in the middle of the night, Walter answered the phone. The garage barely made money anymore, but Walter never stopped helping people. Across town, Ethan Cole sat in the top office of Cole Development Group, staring at blueprints spread across a glass table. Ethan was rich, powerful, and respected in business magazines across America. He built luxury shopping centers, hotels, and apartment towers in cities nationwide. And now he wanted the land where Walter's garage stood. The property sat near a new highway project, and Ethan believed the land would soon become worth millions. "There's just one problem," his assistant said carefully. "That old mechanic." Ethan replied, "He refuses to sell." Ethan smirked. "Everyone sells eventually." The next afternoon, Ethan visited the garage personally. Walter looked up from under the hood of an old Mustang when the shiny SUV rolled in. "You Walter Hayes?" Ethan asked. "That's me." Ethan glanced around with clear disgust. "You're sitting on valuable property. I'm offering you $200,000 for this place." Walter wiped grease from his hands. "Not for sale." Ethan laughed softly. "You could retire comfortably." "I'm already comfortable." Ethan's smile faded. "You're running a dying business." Walter looked toward the street. "This garage helped put food on my family's table for 40 years. People depend on me." Ethan leaned closer. "Sentiment doesn't pay bills." Walter answered calmly. "Neither does greed." The words irritated Ethan more than he expected. For weeks, Ethan kept pushing. He sent lawyers. He increased the offer. He even tried pressuring the city council. But Walter refused every single time. Then one rainy evening, something unexpected happened. Ethan's teenage son, Mason, crashed his motorcycle on a road outside town. A passing driver called emergency services, but before the ambulance arrived, another truck stopped beside the injured boy. It was Walter. The old mechanic carefully removed his jacket and covered Mason to keep him warm from the freezing rain. "You stay with me, son," Walter said gently. Mason's leg was badly injured, and he was terrified. Walter stayed beside him the entire time until paramedics arrived. At the hospital later that night, Ethan rushed into the emergency room. When he saw Walter sitting quietly in the waiting area, he froze. "You?" Ethan asked. Walter nodded. "Your son's gonna be all right." Ethan looked overwhelmed. "You stayed with him. Kids shouldn't be alone after something like that." For the first time in years, Ethan didn't know what to say. A week later, Ethan returned to the garage again. But this time, he came alone. No lawyers. Walter joked lightly. Ethan managed a small smile. "Mason told me what you did." Walter shrugged. Anyone would have done the same. Ethan looked around the garage more carefully than before. Photos covered one wall. Old racing posters hung beside rusted tools. Trophies sat dusty on shelves. Ethan pointed at a faded black and white picture. "That you?" Walter smiled softly. "Long time ago." The photo showed a younger Walter standing beside a race car. "You raced professionally." "Not professionally," Walter replied. "But my older brother Henry did." Walter's eyes grew distant. He was one of the best drivers nobody remembers. Ethan noticed something unusual then. The garage floor near the back had strange metal markings. "What's under there?" Walter hesitated. Nothing important. But Ethan's curiosity sparked immediately. That night, Ethan researched Henry Hayes online. To his surprise, he discovered Henry had once raced against some of America's biggest motorsport legends during the 1970s. Then Ethan found an old article mentioning rumors of missing race cars connected to Henry Hayes after a mysterious fire decades ago. The next morning, Ethan returned again. "You knew those cars survived, didn't you?" Ethan asked quietly. Walter looked tired. "My brother died before the fire investigation finished. People accused him of insurance fraud. Said he hid the cars." "And did he?" Walter walked slowly toward the back of the garage. "My brother loved racing more than life itself. Before he died, he asked me to protect what mattered most to him." Walter pulled a hidden lever near the wall. The concrete floor slowly shifted open. Ethan stared in disbelief. Beneath the garage was a hidden underground room. Inside sat 6 vintage race cars covered beneath protective sheets. Perfectly preserved. Ethan stepped forward speechless. "These are worth millions." Walter nodded quietly. Henry planned to donate them someday to a racing museum. But after the accusations, I couldn't trust anyone. Ethan walked slowly around the collection. One car carried signatures from legendary drivers. Another had custom engineering far ahead of its time. It was one of the greatest hidden discoveries in racing history. "You could become rich overnight," Ethan whispered. Walter smiled sadly. "I've spent my whole life fixing cars for people who needed help. Money stopped mattering a long time ago." For the first time in years, Ethan felt ashamed. Not because of business. Because he realized Walter had something Ethan never truly had. Peace. A few days later, Ethan called a press conference. Reporters expected him to announce a new luxury development project. Instead, Ethan shocked everyone. "The Hayes garage property will not be developed," he announced. Murmurs filled the room. Ethan continued. "My company will fully restore the garage and help create the Henry Hayes Racing Museum for the community." Reporters looked stunned. "And ownership?" someone asked. Ethan smiled. "It stays with Walter Hayes." The town erupted with excitement. Over the next year, volunteers, mechanics, and racing fans worked together restoring the property. Tourists began visiting from across the country. The museum became famous not only for the hidden cars, but for the story behind them. But what mattered most to Walter wasn't the money or attention. It was seeing young kids walk into the garage with wonder in their eyes again. One afternoon, Ethan stood beside Walter watching families explore the museum. "You changed my life," Ethan admitted quietly. Walter chuckled. "No. Your son's accident changed your life." Then Walter placed a gentle hand on Ethan's shoulder. Kindness has a funny way of finding people when they need it most. Years later, a bronze sign stood outside the garage entrance. It read, "Built on compassion. Preserved through kindness." And every visitor who walked through those doors learned the same lesson. Sometimes the greatest treasures aren't hidden underground. Sometimes they're hidden inside the hearts of people who choose kindness, even when the world gives them every reason not to. Because kindness always leaves a legacy far greater than money ever could.